Hello, everybody. I'm Bart Robley, and I'm here with some great friends of mine. Jeremy Steinkohler, the amazing Chip Ritter, Ricky Stojak down in
Hey.
San Diego, and our friend Rick Long, our guest today. Hello, Rick Long. How are you?
Hello, I am fine.
It's
Thank you
it's a
for
cold
having
day in
me.
Arkansas, from what you said.
It is very cold here.
Ooh.
I'll check the temperature update here in a minute, but we're having kind of an Arctic blast here. It's not been this cold since 1983.
Wow,
Mm.
that's a
Yeah.
Oh.
that's
Oh,
a wow.
yeah.
So we got a kind of a special and a little bit different deck program for you guys today, and I wanted to have my friend Rick Long on because of a show that we saw of Bobby Angeletta, Bobby A. Bobby's a great guy, and we're hoping to have him here on deck real soon. He had, and forgive me, Bobby, if you're watching or you see this, he did an interview with a lady that was a breast cancer survivor, and it was really very touching, and it was really, she's a drummer, a great player, and I apologize for not knowing her name. But she was very inspirational. And my friend Rick Long went through something very tragic, just like that, and survived it. I met Rick a number of years ago while on tour with the Sam Morrison Band. We were playing in Yuma, Arizona, we did three sets there, and I was standing by the stage one night, and this guy walks up to me, and he had real long hair and a bushy beard, and had on he was a biker, and he had on a black t-shirt and a black leather vest and black pants and silver chains, and he walks up and introduces himself. Really nice guy, and says that he's a writer for a columnist for Modern Drummer magazine, amongst other magazines. And would I be interested in possibly having an article done? And I said, yes, I would. And we talked for a little while. Well, never heard from him. And a couple years went by, and a few years later at the same show, Yuma Prison Run, here comes this guy. Didn't have a beard this time. His hair was coming back. He's wearing, and amongst a bunch of bikers, he's wearing a nice flowered Hawaiian shirt. He says, "Hey, do you remember me?" I said, "No, I don't." He goes, "I'm Rick. I'm the writer for Modern Drummer magazine." I was like, "Oh yeah, I do remember you." And he started studying with me, and he shared with me that he had been a throat cancer survivor. And then he started coming to study with me, and then we'll let him tell his story from there. But I thought this would be a great episode for anybody that's struggling and going through any hard thing in life, medical wise, especially cancer, and maybe be an inspiration to people out there, because Rick would always come into his lessons and he would share with me what drumming meant to him and how drumming helped him come out of that, the not only the cancer but the depression that came along with it. So I don't want to tell your whole story, Rick, but that's how I met Rick. And
Yeah.
Rick is a great guy. And
Thank
so
you.
here he is, Rick Long. Rick, talk to us a little bit about what you went through with cancer, and how drumming helped you with it, please.
Will do. My story is really that I would, as you mentioned, I used to have a beard, not a big ZZ Top kind of beard, but enough of a beard that I didn't realize that I had a lump on the side of my neck. And so one day I was driving home from work. I'm, I have a license to be a registered nurse. And I readily admit that's how I've made a living most of my life. My passion is music. I love the drums. But going back just a little further, when I was about 25 years old, I was starting to do a bunch of gigs and kind of getting busy. And I was finishing up a 2 year degree in music. And this was some years ago. And I looked around and I said, one of two things is going to happen. Either I'm going to get in a band and we're going to make $1 million, or I'm going to starve to death. And most of the guys I know are starving. That doesn't sound like much fun. So I
Yeah.
kind of felt, I heard the voice of God say, nursing would be a good profession for you. And I'm like, okay, all right, is that right? And so anyway, I went to nursing school, got my nursing license, and actually studied psychology a little bit at the graduate level. But I never lost that passion for music. So I always played on the side, and came into a writing career almost by accident. And I'll get to that story in a minute. But um, I was driving home from the hospital one day and the seatbelt got to bothering me, you know, and I was moving this seat trying to get and I'm like, wait a minute, what's that egg in my throat? Ooh. So I went to the doctor the very next day and they gave me some antibiotics, told me to go home, say my prayers, and cross my fingers and hope for the best. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like real good news to me. But that was the protocol. Hope that it's a swollen lymph node and go from there. So on day 7, when it had not gone down, I managed to get an appointment with the head and neck group there at Kaiser in Southern California. And we went in, and that guy biopsied it that day. And I got a call about 4 days later on my cell phone, and they told me, I was at work at the time, and I took the call, and they said, you have malignant throat cancer. We don't know where you have malignant cancer, and we don't know for sure where the original site is. It wouldn't be that lymph node. Can you come back in here? And I'm like, yeah, I think I can. So
Yeah.
anyway, that started a process of figuring out what was going on. And in truth, I had a cancerous left tonsil.
Wow.
And the doctor said, don't worry so much. He said, nobody ever knows they have a cancerous tonsil. It's not like a part of your body where you could determine, oh, I should have done something about this months ago or something. He said, nobody knows that. You can't feel your tonsil. And throat cancer tends to sit. And so the fact that it had already spread to a lymph node, don't let that scare you like it normally does in cancer. It's okay. We'll just do some radiation and chemo and some surgery and we'll get it out of there. And I'm like, you make that sound really easy. And I knew being a nurse, it was not. But anyway, went through a surgery, had the tonsil removed, went through radiation and chemo, which can be quite tough to get through. But I developed some techniques for doing that, some things that would help. And so I actually ended up writing a book about that so that I could, spread the news, try this. It worked for me. And I got through and did fine and decided while I was going through that cancer episode that now was the time to really think about trying to do full-time music. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
And so I had run into Bart again. I had shaved my beard when I went through the radiation treatments. They told me not to worry about the beard, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm worrying about the beard. It's coming off. Not because I was afraid of losing hair. It was more like I don't want anything interrupting that radio signal. I want all of that to go right to the place it needs to go. So,
Wow.
yeah.
So, are you saying that faced with a sort of deeper awareness of your mortality, it made you feel like, wow, this is all of a sudden, I've got to really focus on spending the rest of my time left, however much time that is, on doing what I love to do?
Absolutely. It's really easy. If you have if you love music and you have a full-time day job, it's really easy to think, gosh, I'd like to be doing music full-time and maybe next year, or let's put that on the 5-year plan. And and you'll do things like you'll go to the NAMM show and you'll get really excited about, you'll meet some people or you'll run into some old friends and you'll think, I could be networking better. I could be doing more with this. And then 2 or 3 days later, you're back at work. You're back into whatever your day job is, and the momentum goes down some. I was fortunate to have a part-time career as a writer. Technically, with Modern Drummer, I was a freelancer. I never was employed by them, but I was a freelance writer. And I can tell you real quick how I got into that. There's a magazine called the Music and Sound Retailer. And if you've never worked at a music store or you don't own a music store, you probably might not have heard of it, but it's a trade magazine for music store owners and salespeople. And I had been a subscriber of that for a while because I actually received some product one time that was wrapped in paper. And I'm undoing the paper and I'm like, this is a pretty interesting article here. What is this magazine? And so it turned out to be Music and Sound Retailer. And you could get a free subscription. And so I did. And I had enough of a connection with the music business that it was all right to have that. And so I wrote a letter to the editor one time because I had been shopping for a new set of drums. And that particular weekend, this store, and I won't mention the store, but they were having a deal that if you bought this cheaper set of drums, you got a free set of heads because, of course, the heads on the cheaper set were not really even playable. So I go in and I'm looking at this high dollar kit, and it had obviously been played quite a bit around the store. And I'm like, kind of waiting for the guy to say, look, you buy that kit this weekend, I'll give you free heads on that. Never did do that. So I had written this letter to the editor, to say, here's some tips for salespeople. It was obvious the guy didn't know his product line very well. And I'm like, when the customer comes in and he knows the product line better than you do, you got a problem. And so 2, 3 days later, after sending this off, I get a call from the editor, a guy named Adam Rimson. He was the editor at that time. He called and he said, if you'll turn that letter into an article, I'll pay you money for it. And I'm like, oh,
Okay.
yeah, I can do that. I had been previously married to an English person going through college. So I had edited tons of papers and in grad school wrote tons of papers. And so, paragraph structure and grammar and things like that are kind of second nature for me. I don't struggle with that much. So I reformatted the letter, sent it off. Next thing you know, I'm reading the magazine and I'm in it. Wow, that's pretty cool.
Cool.
So I kept in touch with him and would send off various ideas, and he'd come back and he'd have a little different take on the idea, and I'd be sure I can modify it, no problem. Let's do it. And then 6 months later, I got offered a column. And then that particular publishing house had several magazines, I think 5 magazines. And so it wasn't very long before I got a call from Band and Orchestra Product News and DJ Times and a couple of others.
Wow.
And they're like, we've been seeing your column over there and we think you write pretty well. Would you do a column for us? So I think at one time I had 3 different columns going, 3 different magazines,
Ah.
but the goal was always to get into Modern Drummer,
Mhm.
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
like, oh.
Well,
And I got,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead. Go ahead.
oh, I'll go on and on. I may take up the whole hour. It's bad. So then I got a call one day from Bob Kasha over at Big Bang. He had seen a piece I had done on the head drumsticks for Music and Sound Retailer, and he asked me, he said, would you mind if I called Modern Drummer and got them to write a thing and have you do it? And I'm like, no, that'd be fine. Go ahead. And he did. And that was my foot in the door. I wrote more for Drum Business magazine. Now, see, a lot of people don't know, Modern Drummer for a long time had a second magazine called Drum Business. And it was a trade magazine and music store owners and salespeople, that kind of thing. And Kevin Kearns was the editor there. And he had me do quite a bit of stuff. There were a couple of us freelancers in Southern California, Robin Flans and me.
Mm-hmm.
And so if something happened around Southern California, one of us would usually get the call. And so I would go to, like, if Yamaha was opening up an artist relations office, well, you'd go. And the story was pretty much the same. You'd go, you'd talk to a couple of people, they'd have a meal or something, and somebody would play, and you go home, write it up, and you get a little check for that, and be a freelancer. It was cool. So I wrote more for Drum Business and Modern Drummer, but I did do 2 interviews on Stevie DeStanislaw for Modern
Oh yeah.
Drummer,
Yep.
and was blessed to get to do an article on Paiste cymbals. And this was maybe 11 years ago or so.
Eh.
Yeah.
Chip perked up.
Hey, Chip. There you go.
Yeah. Paiste hosted me, and I got to go to the factory in Switzerland.
Cool.
And so
That's awesome.
in my writing career, there are 2 or 3 high points, and that's right up there in the top 2 or 3. The other was that I got to do an interview with somebody who was a drummer that no one knew he played drums, and he had invented something, a better way to tune conga drums. It was really, it was kind of a timpani-like mechanism that you would make the conga drum with this timpani-like mechanism, and he had patented that and wanted an article done. There's a guy named Marlon Brando. And so,
No
I
kidding.
remember that story.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah. So
Wow.
that and the trip to Switzerland, I'm going to tell you, are right up there at the top. And getting to interview Stevie D. That is one nice guy right there.
Hey, I got
Yeah.
his computer sitting right there. I bought his old Apple. That's what I'm recording with.
Cool.
He's a great guy. So let's go back to the thing, Rick. My question for you, as far as like the cancer thing was concerned, when you came to me and you started studying with me, you were just at the tail end of your cancer treatment.
Yeah.
You were just you were still going through it, but you're right at the tail end. I
Yeah.
remember sometimes you come in and you weren't feeling well, but you were there. I mean, you were always there every week, and you came in from Redlands at the time. You were
Yeah.
driving from Redlands into Fullerton to
That-
take lessons, and
Yeah.
it was really cool because he'd always start his lesson. He's like, "Hey, I got some show and tell." And he'd have a new piece of gear. He's rebuilding this drum set, and he would talk about that. And then we get down to business, and we'd start playing.
Yeah.
When you were going through the cancer treatment, how did drumming like affect you, not only physically but mentally? What did it do for you to help you kind of keep your spirits up? What was it that was there about it that really got you through it?
There had always been this passion for the drums. And, I tell people that when I sit down behind the kit, it's like I'm sitting down in the couch in my living room. That's how comfortable I feel with it. And that's not to say I think I play great or anything. It's just this sense that this is like a place I belong. This is a place I enjoy being. For some people, that might be on the lawnmower, and they love doing lawns, or something, or on a motorcycle or something like that. But for me, when I sit down behind the drum set, it's just like, okay, I'm home. Let's play. And so, going through the cancer thing, I'm like, I haven't done what I need to do. I seriously
Remember that.
considered, what if I get to heaven and God says, or St. Peter says, we gave you a talent for playing the drums. Again, not that I think I play any better than anybody else, but you've got this talent for playing the drums. What'd you do with that? Oh, I played a few weddings and a couple of bars, and really didn't try very hard to get in the business or anything. Oh, okay. Well, how about for next life we try something like ditch digging? See how you do with that? I thought, I got to do something with this. I got to do something serious with this. And a big motivator for me was just looking at how people like Arnoff, for example. Here's a guy that just out there all the time, doing stuff all the time, and the way he played. And I know Bart's a fan of his too. The way he played pretty aggressively on the kit. And I thought, I gotta reach out. I gotta start doing things and taking lessons. I gotta up my game, because I've never been one to fool myself about skills or anything. I'd been blessed to write articles with some top shelf guys, and and so I never fooled myself that, I could sub for this guy like right now. Oh, no, I gotta be studying. And I knew Bart taught. And so April is when that event happens that
Yeah.
Bart's talking about. It's like the signal of the beginning of the touring season
It
for
was
the San
always,
Morrison
yeah,
band.
most definitely. Yeah.
It
That
was
was
like
gig one for
That was like
years.
gig one. It's mid-April every year at the same time. And so I approached him about, I would like to study. And something that really struck me, I'm going to sing Bart's praises for just a minute. And that's that here I am, this older student coming in saying, I want to have a drumming career. And he's probably thinking in the back of his mind, yeah, right. Come on.
That's
Oh,
not even.
this guy's crazy or something. But you know what? You'd never know it. You never know if he thought that at all. And so I began to take lessons with him, and just that drive that I wasn't done. I hadn't done what I really needed to be doing. That that did a lot to keep me going.
Rick, I have a question for you, and
Yes, sir.
I tell you what, we're just really glad that you're well, and we appreciate you sharing your
Thank you.
experience with us and our audience. And I really like your first name. So,
Thank you.
so when you were first diagnosed, can you share with us your mindset and how it helped you heal? I mean, did you scream? Did you cry? How did you get through it? Did you meditate? Just what were the processes that you used to apply to get you healthy?
I think that anybody's first reaction is going to be a little bit of shock about this. But in truth, I really already thought that's what it was. So when the guy called, I'm like, okay, you're just confirming what I already thought about this. What are we going to do about this? And the surgeon that I had my first appointment with, when I said something about, how do you think this happened? He said, don't worry about how it happened. Just worry about what we're going to do about it.
Yeah.
Okay. And so
Right.
I'm sure
That
there
takes
was some,
that off the table, that worrying,
yeah,
like, did I do
Yeah.
something wrong?
Right.
doesn't matter how you
Right.
got here. It matters where we're going from here. That's
Right.
the deal. And so
Right.
I'm sure there were some tears and I'm sure there were some sad days, but there was just that I just knew I was going to be okay. I have a great
Uh-huh.
faith. I'm
Yep.
a
Yep.
faithful person, and I prayed a
Yep.
lot about it. And I
Yep.
just had this sense that we were going to get through this. But at the same time, I knew that when we get through this, life can't be like it's been. There's some things that need to
Yeah.
change,
Uh-huh.
and there's some situations that need to change. And now's the
So
time.
you had something to look forward to then. Like,
Yes,
I'm gonna have
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
cool.
you've gone on to play like, and I know your story, but I also have your bio up here. I mean, you've gone on,
Uh-huh.
that because after you studied with me, you were still living in Redlands, obviously, and then you
Yeah.
moved to
Mhm.
Arkansas. I remember running into you. Where were we playing? We were up in the mountains.
Up in
Uh,
Big Bear or something.
yeah, at the Big Bear Lake. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were, I mean, you made some big changes. I mean, you
Yeah.
changed everything about your life. You
Mhm.
got remarried.
Mhm.
Then and you were playing in bands. You went out on tour. You wrote the book. You played jazz, rock, you know, country,
Yeah.
everything. I remember going through syncopation with you, going through like
Yeah.
page 49, going, okay, you got to keep the ride cymbal swinging and swing your left hand and doing all those ostinatos and stuff.
Yeah.
So you actually applied this stuff. I mean, so you didn't just say, gee, some things have to change. You really did it, right? What
Really
was
did it.
what was the mindset there? Were you scared? I mean, were you fearful? What did you do to keep a positive attitude about it?
It just I think there are a couple of things. One is um, I'll tell the story right quick about what the tipping point, as they say, was, and that was um, I was just coming out of treatments. This might have been, I'd have to check the dates, but it's right around the time I was going to start taking lessons with you, or that I talked with you. But There was a show at Irvine Meadows, which, and Bart, you may know what that's called this week or not. I don't know now, but that outdoor.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
the venue.
yeah,
Joe's
yeah.
venue. I don't know. They
The,
change it every week.
the outdoor concert venue in Irvine, which used to be called Irvine Meadows.
Right.
These things changed names a lot, but there was going to be a show there one night. It was Cheap Trick, Heart, and Journey.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There you
that's
go.
a good line.
Yeah.
And so
Now you're talking.
I was so fresh out of treatments that I really knew that I couldn't drive from Redlands to Irvine at night, and I just couldn't do it. So I got a guitar player friend of mine that I'd worked with, and I called him up and I said, "Dude, I'll buy your ticket if you'll drive me down there. Let's go see this show. I need to get out and hear some music." And so actually a couple of his kids wanted to go too because they were familiar with these bands. The younger kids all know this music. Hearts on like the guitar video game Barracuda.
Yeah, oh,
They were
yeah.
like, oh, we've all played Barracuda on the, on that game.
Guitar Hero.
Guitar
Guitar
Hero.
Hero. Sorry, I couldn't think of what the name was. And we know Journey from movie tie-ins. They've got tons of music out there, but we want to go to. Traffic was so bad we missed Cheap Trick, but we got there in time for Heart and Journey.
Right. I gotta pull that out.
Yeah, that was like,
Oh,
that
Yeah.
was bad.
they're still rocking. You can still go see them down the road.
Yeah,
Did you,
yeah.
when you were studying with me, did you find that because of the, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump off the Cheap Trick story.
no.
I just, if I don't ask, I'll forget. Did you find it hard going through treatment to like muscle through some of the lessons? Was that tough for you?
The big thing about chemo and radiation is that you're very tired and you just don't have a lot of energy. So probably there were days when I came to lesson and you were like, this guy didn't look very good. I would have been tired from the drive over there and stuff. And so you kind of have to get up and plan your day for your energy and decide, okay, I'm going to spend this much time practicing. And I had a practice set up in the living room, actually, where I was. And, you'd spend some time on the kit and then you'd say, okay, it's time to rest. I'm going to rest for a while. And then spend some more time on the kit and rest a while. And so, yeah, you had to do that. I'm going to jump back to my Irvine story so I don't forget to say, no, that's okay. But so we go to this show and it was the most packed I'd ever seen. I mean, it literally was standing room only. And there were so many people in the upper part where our tickets were that they were jumping over the fence to go up the hill. And
Wow.
Security was letting them do it because like there's so many people here. We're absolutely packed. And so, people were looking for spacing where they could find it. And we're sitting there listening. And Heart was great. But it was really Journey's night. That was the first year that Arnel Pineda was singing, and he's up there running around going crazy and just killing it. And it was a full moon that night. And I remember looking at the full moon, and I was watching Dean Castronova play. And I said to myself, you don't have 4 arms and 4 legs. You have 2 arms and you have 2 legs, just like anybody else. Why can't I do that? There's nothing physical, and he's a great drummer. I'm not taking away from that. I'm saying that there's nothing different about him than me. I have 2 arms, I have 2 legs. He has 2 arms, 2 legs. Why am I not trying to do this? He's trying to do it, and he's doing it.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying enough. And so that was really the night that I said, I'm going to make a difference. I'm gonna change things, and I'm gonna try. Yeah.
I remember you telling me that story. I remember you telling me that story at one of your lessons. Did you and then from there, when did you write the book? Because you wrote the book after you moved to Arkansas. Is that correct? Because I know you told me you were writing a book, but at the time when you were studying with me, you didn't. You were really working on your drum. and
Yeah.
you were rebuilding that drum set, and you were playing and getting it together there. But you started writing the book in Arkansas, or what? How did that work?
Yeah, it started out doing just a few little things on it before I left California. And then when I got back to Arkansas, I married a childhood friend, also a cancer survivor. And she wanted to change her life as well. And she wanted to become a minister and go to seminary. And I'm like, okay. And when we were first getting back together, we'd talk about, I'm trying to change my life and she's trying to change hers. And we decided, let's get married and get on this track together. And so we did. And over a period of about 2 years, I lived in Arkansas and we worked on getting scholarship stuff together. And we moved to Kansas City in 2013, and she went to
That's right.
seminary for 4 years.
Yeah.
And literally on the way driving to Kansas City, she said to me, she said, I hear there's a great music scene there. Don't look for a nursing job. Just do music. We'll live cheap. It'll be okay. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's try this.
That's love.
Nice. That's love.
Within,
Yeah.
I got, now she and her mom had been up to Kansas City and had arranged, had found a place for us to live and some things like that. So they'd been up there and back a time or two. We get in town that day and we went downtown for lunch. And I got to talking to the guy that owned the little restaurant in our suburb area. And it turns out he was a saxophone player and he invited me to come play. And I thought, okay, I've been in town 4 hours and I've been invited to go play with this guy. This could work, maybe. Okay. So, anyway, long story short, before I know it, I'm involved in a jazz band that had a standard Saturday brunch gig from 10 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon with a guy that loved old style Kansas City jazz from the 1930s and early 40s.
Cool.
And so the way, interesting thing on this now, he called me for a gig and we went and played at a coffee house thing. And at the end of the night, he said, hey, I've got this jazz brunch gig coming and I really need a bass player. I hear you play bass. And I said, well, I've studied bass a little bit, but, I've played in church a lot. I can play eighth notes on the root really well. And, but other than that, I don't know that a jazz gig would be, and he said, what's your point? And I said, I don't know. I don't really know how to do jazz. And he said, rehearsals at 6 o'clock on Sunday night. You just come on. It'll be fine. You'll figure it out. I need a bass player that bad. And I'm like, oh. So I found a teacher and I said, I got to figure out this walking bass thing like today. And so, it took a little longer than that, of course, but I took that gig. And so all of a sudden now I'm reading like 30 charts a weekend, and he would change the entire set list once a month. He'd throw everything out, and it was all real book stuff.
Oh, man.
I tell this story in a drumming context because let me tell you what helped my drumming as much as studying with Bart was playing bass. Because I always heard that the drums and the bass are supposed to be locked in. They're supposed to be listening to one another. And I'm like, cool, what am I supposed to be listening for? I don't really know. I mean, I kind of know, but when you play bass, then you figure out right away a lot of things about the drums. So, for example, when I get back behind the drums, then I remember all the stuff that I was thinking about when I had the bass on. Like, why are you so busy over there?
I bet.
What are you doing with your foot so inconsistently?
Right.
And why don't you just relax and play the groove? And, why don't you make it easier for me to figure out what you're doing? Or, just things like that. So playing bass helped my drumming a lot. And so anyway, in Kansas City, it was a busy music scene. I will tell you that Kansas City is as good as Austin, Texas, but nobody kind of knows it.
Mhm.
They
I've heard
just
that a
don't.
lot.
They just don't.
Yeah.
They don't put it out there like Austin does some way. There were 6 active jazz clubs that were busy
Wow.
places, and I got to play most of them. They have a section called the Paseo, and that's a there's a great jazz club there and a jazz museum. Um, their downtown area had great jazz clubs, and who knows what's going to be after the pandemic. But at that time, from 2013 to 2017, when we lived there, I was busy. I might some Saturdays I'd do 3 gigs in a day. I'd go do my jazz brunch, then I'd run over to one of the churches that had a Saturday afternoon thing, and I'd play church, and then I'd go out Saturday night and play rock with somebody else. It was crazy, and
Nice.
yeah, so that was a good time. It was a good
Hey,
time.
Rick,
Yep.
Rick, you played with lots of bands. On your bio, you also toured. I saw a picture of you at Buddy Guy's Legends
Yes.
and playing with the various bands and touring. I got to ask you, what if you had to narrow it down? What was your favorite playing situation with the band? Like, what made you most happy? Which one and
Oh my
why?
gosh. As far as all the different bands, um, I, I want to say that there's something to be had from every one of them because they were
Mhm.
so different. Um, with the jazz bands, gosh, I learned I learned an appreciation for jazz that I knew I should have, but I really learned how to appreciate that and got into that. With the blue, I played for a blues artist from northern Mississippi named Robert Kimbrough Sr. Robert Kimbrough's dad, Junior Kimbrough, was a blues legend kind of guy. Has a star on Beale Street in Memphis kind of thing, and Robert's carried on that tradition of cotton patch soul blues very well. And I got an opportunity to play drums for him for about a year. And we would go, we'd play like festivals in Delaware and things like that. And those festivals were a lot of fun. As a drummer, I got spoiled right quick on that. I remember at the one in Delaware, I remember um, coming up on stage and the drum tech for the sound crew was there. And he said, how do you want the kit? And I looked and it was like I think he had a 4-piece kit set up or something. And I said, "Oh, that'll be fine. You don't have to do anything." He said, "No, no, really. What do you want?" And he went like this, and there were cases. He could have set up Neil Peart. I mean, he had whatever you wanted. And he's just like, "What do you want?"
What do you
And I'm
want?
like, "Oh, well." And so I think I was kind of using a 5-piece kit at that time. I said, "I want a 5-piece kit with 2 matching crashes up here and a ride right here and blah, blah, blah." And 5 minutes later, this guy had it all going and mic'd up and
Nice.
ready, maybe 10 minutes. I'm like, I could get used to this.
Well, there
I've been
wasn't like
schlepping my
one
own
main,
gear my whole life, and
there
still
wasn't
do,
like one main
so
favorite playing situation. You got a lot out of all of it.
I got a lot out of all of it. And
Okay.
the different clubs, there was always something to be learned. The different festivals, and hang out and listen to other people play and meet people and do what Stevie D taught me: give out a business card to everybody you play with. Everybody you
Mhm.
see, you talk to somebody interesting, give them a business card.
Yep.
Yeah.
Rick, I've got a question. Sorry, Chip, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say you got your book that you wrote, The Nurse Who
Yes.
Became a Rock Star. And
Yes.
and I was wondering, where can people find your book? How do they get that book?
Amazon.com. Again,
Amazon.com.
yeah, the nurse who had cancer and became a rock star.
What kind of snare drum is that on there?
That
Come on, I got to drum geek out a little bit.
actually, the
Oh,
back
there's your
cover
kit.
opens up
There you
the
go.
kit,
Ooh.
and that was that was a kit. The snare drum's mine. The kit was provided by the venue that's in Ottumwa, Iowa, where my sister is a junior college teacher. The jazz band played a gig up at the theater up there at the college. But that snare drum, Bart, yeah, it's a lot like that.
Black Beauty with wood hoops.
Yep, there you go.
That would be the Yamaha wood hoops on a shell that I bought for $40 at the store where Bart was teaching at the time.
Yeah.
In Fullerton.
We put those hoops on there, didn't we?
I think we did.
I think we did one of your lessons.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, Jeremy.
Yeah.
What's that?
I'm sorry if I interrupted you.
Not at all. Not at all. I've got a bunch of questions for you, Rick, but I've been so riveted by hearing your story. I've just been taking it all in and soaking it all up. Thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your story with us.
I'm honored to have you asked me to do this. Truly.
The honor's ours, really. I know a handful of other musicians who have also survived cancer, and every one of them has come through it with a kind of clarity and, sort of a change of heart or a change of purpose a little bit. And I wondered if you had advice for people, who are sort of searching, but maybe haven't found that, and, some wisdom you might be able to share from having survived a potentially life-threatening situation that made you realize, that you needed to make some changes and what you were here to do. I don't know what advice do you have for drummers who are kind of trying to figure it out?
Whatever your faith is, people have different takes on, whether Christianity or Muslim or whether you believe in the flow of the universe or whatever it is. But there are things out there greater than us. And I think that each of us has certain talents and certain passions. I've been doing some reading lately by Lindsay Manfredi, is a bass player for a group called Cold. And she has a book out and talks about discovering what it is that you want to do. And she said, that the stuff that you feel like maybe you want to do, there's a reason you feel that way, that there was something driving that from beyond you, and pay attention to that. I've also heard it described as the voice behind the voice, and like the voice in your head. What's the voice behind there? There's something back there that urges you to do things sometimes. Not all, if they're urging you to hit somebody with a frying pan, that's not the same thing. No, that's
what was
different.
the name of that book again, Rick? What was the name of that book?
The name of that book is Uneffable. And she had to search long and hard to find a publisher that would publish it with that title, but it's available.
Wow.
Look for that on Amazon as well. But
seriously, the whole really
okay. And the purpose of her book is she was going through some things, and the idea was to become where people can't mess with you, become determined. I think a similar title would have been Perseverance, or get to a place where this is what I'm going to do, and you're not going to mess with me about it. Yeah. I'm going to change my career. I'm going to do this, and there's not anybody that's going to tell me you're an idiot or you're a fool or you can't do this.
Yeah,
you can do this.
Yeah.
You just have to get about it. And I think that's the gist of that. And that's kind of part of my book too, is that you're just because you have cancer, don't decide that you're done. You're not. You can get through this, and you can move forward. Yeah. Did I answer your question? I may need to hear the question.
Yeah, I mean, I think you answered it by example too. I mean, just pursuing your passion and just becoming, aware on a more deep level of what your passion was and what you were here to do.
Yeah.
And I think that I mean, that's a beautiful story, and I love it. I mean, some of us, I hear stories all the time about musicians who ever since they were 5 years old, they knew this is what they wanted to do. But not all of us are like that. I wasn't like that.
Cool.
And it's just great to hear a story about someone who's found a deeper place of happiness and an enriched life, doing what they love to do. And to me, that's great.
Chip.
Hey, Rick, I got another question. This is kind of a basic question, and hope you're not insulted by it. But as a writer, as an author, have you ever gone through writer's block? And if you have, what have you done to get through writer's block?
I think I've had a little bit of that at times, particularly at the end of my cancer episode. I had been writing for about 10 years or so when that came along. And I remember having gone through the chemotherapy, and I had an article due for Modern Drummer and or for Drum Business. And I was getting right up on that deadline. And I was like, I think I need to read through this one more time or whatever. A lot of that was just from being fatigued from the chemo and stuff like that. As far as writer's block, best thing to do is get the drums out and start playing. Just get your mind wrapped around something else. And I used to have a saying that just get out and take a trip or do something. And it just always seemed like stuff would start to happen. And you'd start writing down stuff. This is how the articles come together. When we were touring around, I would make little notes about, okay, what happened today? Because you just get up and you just kind of wait, and pretty soon something happened crazy that you're like, wait a minute, write this down. Such and such, we ran into it. I remember one time we were driving down the street in Philadelphia, I think, and Robert had these magnetic signs made for the Suburban. And because this was not touring in a big bus, this was touring in like a huge Suburban, loaded down where we barely had room to sit. That's the blues artist way. And so we're going down the road, and some guy pulled up beside us and pointed to his phone and rolled down the window and yelled, "I'm streaming you guys right now." And he had just seen the sign on the truck and pulled it up on, YouTube Music or something, and was streaming the music. And darn if he didn't show up at the show that night.
That's outstanding.
So, stuff like that.
I got a question.
Sure.
Rick, one of the things that we all talk about here on Deck a lot is the importance of reading music. And if you remember when you and I studied, that was a big thing. And we went through, I know we went through my book a little, well, we went through a big section of my book, and then we went through syncopation and some stick control. You worked on a little bit of double bass. But you talked about, when you were playing bass and reading charts and going through the, okay, next month, Nick's set of charts come in. And this is for young drummers and people out there. Talk to us about the importance of the ability to read a chart, whether it be a transcription or a chart, just the, how did that come about?
One of the arguments that you'll frequently hear is, if I learn to read music, it's going to change the way I play. I have a natural ability and I don't want to do anything about that. And I'm like, okay, I can understand that you feel that way. But when you learn to read in kindergarten and the first grade, did it change the way you talked? No,
Nope.
It opened up a whole world. You still talk just fine. And the same is going to be with music. If you can play a little bit, learn to read, because it opens up a whole new thing.
Opens doors.
My ability to read, the thing that I work on still, and again, I might say I'm pretty good about it. I can always be better at it. But when you get to that point where you're reading and you're 1 or 2 bars ahead all the time, or maybe even a line ahead if you know the tune real well. But you're a couple of bars ahead. You're like, okay, I know I wouldn't be doing this without this ability. I need this ability to read.
Mm-hmm.
And if you talk to guys like Arnoff and stuff like that, those guys chart out stuff all the time. He subbed on the Styx gig one time, and
Yeah.
and told me that what he did, and either he told me this or Todd Zuckerman might have told me this at the NAMM show one time or something, like, because we were talking about Kenny subbing on that. And again, these guys, I'm dropping names here, like these guys don't really know me that well. I mean, Kenny might remember talking to me a few times through Modern Drummer Connections or something. But you learn when you talk to these guys that are heavy hitters, pay attention and learn from them. And that's why I mentioned them. But Todd said Kenny wrote out the fills, some of those iconic Styx fills, and read. And I went to see Kenny play in Long Beach, subbing for Styx. And I'm looking at, and two things caught my eye that night. One is he's reading.
Yeah.
He is up there reading this thing. The other thing that caught me was that he used his kit, same setup he always uses, didn't change anything. That's just what he plays. And he always plays that kit pretty much. I might have seen him flip the two, how he flips the two toms, it's got the
Just
small
use
on
one.
the right.
Yeah.
I think I've seen him reverse that a time or two lately, maybe. But
I've seen him play it one up lately. Yeah.
Yes, that's what I mean. He's moved that ride cymbal where we all love the sweet spot where Buddy Rich had it,
Yeah.
And so those two things stood out to me, and that ability to read, and particularly playing bass. The guy in the jazz band, by the way, would occasionally he'd turn around and say, "Okay, we're going to sight read this today on the gig." Oh, okay. Jeez. And we'd be
No pressure.
reading Sunjet, no pressure there at all. Plus, I'm not playing my main instrument. I'm struggling to do this at all. And we're going to sight read on the gig.
That makes me wonder, Rick, as a drummer, you're a drummer mainly, right?
Right.
When you're playing bass, do you ever get the feeling that you're working for the dark side?
You know what? I have actually enjoyed the bass.
Great question.
I'm just kidding, man.
Hold on. I'm sorry. I'm late to the show. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Awesome.
I was laughing too hard to give you a rim shot, brother.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what I don't do. I don't do
Working
that
for the
famous
dark
thing.
side.
I don't say to myself that one thing that all drummers say when they're watching another drummer. Man, I could do that so much better.
Right.
No, I don't ever say that.
Right.
Rick,
Oh, man.
I've got a question for you on a separate, different topic. As a writer, have you ever had to do a product review of a product you didn't like or didn't think was very good, or have to interview a drummer who you really weren't that keen on?
Fortunately, I will say that I basically have not. The thing about product reviews now is generally they're not ever going to send you a crappy product.
Mm-hmm.
They generally are going to send you something that's well made, that has a specific use. And I had a column for a while that was a review column. And so most of the time, you're going to get great stuff. And Ricky, you're holding up some aquarium product there, right?
Yeah. Speaking of great stuff, I know we have some great stuff for our audience today.
Yeah, we do. Actually, here's what we're going to do. I've got some snare drum. I've got a snare drum head to give away from Chris today, and it is we're going to give away a 14-inch reflector with the orange logo on it there. And what we're going to do is, I don't know how many people we have watching, and if nobody answers this question, we'll figure out another way. But we came up with a question, and you can't Google, and we can tell by the way you type if you've Googled Jeremy's really good at that. Jeremy's like really good. Like, oh, they Googled it. They're out. He does it all the time. Anyway, so you can't Google who played drums on Miles Davis Kind of Blue. If you can answer that and put it in the comments, yeah, we all go like this. We all want the snare drum head.
I Googled it.
Yeah, Chip Googled it. But so if you put if you don't Google it, and I don't know how we're gonna dust for Googling, but we'll figure it out. But we're gonna if you can, whoever answers that in the comments below, we will give you one of these snare drum head. If nobody answers, then we'll figure out another way to give it away. So there you go. Rick, on when you were writing for, do you still write for Modern Drummer? Let me start with that.
It's been a while.
You did, what was the article you did for 38 Special?
I did the drummer for 38 Special.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And a great guy. We had a good interview. He had not been interviewed ever by a Modern Drummer. And so it was my honor to get to put him out there. My wife went to high school with Bobby Capps, who was the keyboard player for 38 Special. And so I had talked to him a time or two. Gary Moffat, yes, thank you for that. And getting older, it's harder to remember some things.
Well, I couldn't remember either. That's why I felt bad. I was like, remember for 38 Special?
Gary's
wouldn't come up.
Gary's a great guy. We had several wonderful phone calls doing this interview. And you know, what a success story he is with 38. You know, they were not at the top of their game when he joined that band. And then, you know, right before the pandemic, I tell you, this bunch was working all the time.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of these bands have done very well, and he does a great job for them. And
you know what? Anyway, because of that, he got Sam and I in to see him one night. They were local here. And I don't remember how it happened, but a connection through you sent me information, and I texted him, and he goes, yeah, come on down to the show. And he put Sam and I dead center right up front. And they have, you forget, it's kind of like any band that's been around that long. You go see them and you just forget how many darn hits they had. There were so many hits, they couldn't play them all. So they did this medley. And it was probably about a 25 or 30 minute medley. And and they just strung them all together. And it was phenomenal, man. And he nailed it. He just nailed it, man.
Yeah, I saw 38 Special here, and one thing I remember was how close they sound to the record on almost every song.
Right?
Yes.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Dude. Fantastic band. Fantastic band.
Rick, is there a place or a way that we can read your old columns? Are they collected all in one place to check out?
Yeah. Modern Drummer runs an archive, and you could search for my name and pick up the stuff that I did in Modern Drummer. I don't have an online archive of any of the drum business stuff or any of the things from the Testa Communications. Now, Testa Communications might have an online archive. That's TESTA, TestaCommunications.com. Google that, and Music and Sound Retailer, Band and Orchestra, Product News. If they have archives of that, you could put my name in and probably come up with a few things.
And do you have any articles or interviews that you've done that you're especially proud of, like that you would point to as like, oh man, if you read one or two of my things, these are the things I'd like you to read?
Probably the Brando interview in Drum Business, if that's available somewhere. I got to interview Steve Fisher right after the V drums first came out. I did a lot of reviews, by the way, on the early electronic drums. I was kind of an early adopter of electronic drums, and had a Yamaha kit for a while, and reviewed the Yamaha and V drum stuff when that was first starting to happen.
Yeah, I've read a couple of your gear guides on Drumeo too.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Nice. Good stuff.
Appreciate that.
Very, very, very cool, Rick.
Yeah.
So Rick, so after COVID, what are you going to be doing? When are you going to be getting back to some gigs? And
Well,
writing?
I think that one thing that has the one thing I think is going to happen from after COVID, there's going to be some better things. It's been a sad time for a lot of people. A lot of people have lost loved ones, friends and neighbors. A great friend of mine that I play music with just spent a month in the hospital and came close to passing away twice, I would tell you. And I'm so glad that he is going to survive this. And there's a couple of projects in the works, but the main thing that I think is going to happen is I'm going to be watching for opportunities to open up. I hate to sit and say, well, this is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm really wanting to do this, because then sometimes that limits you on watching for opportunities. A couple of things that are in my mind is I want to get a Christian project going and help churches raise money. I think there's going to be some building back to be done, because all that basically has shut down during the pandemic. I'm working on getting where I can record a little bit at home. I've never been the biggest fan of home studios, and I say that lovingly, but many times the stuff that comes out of home studios, people are not necessarily the best engineers, or you're not going to be able to set up the sound. Recording drums at home is a big project. That's a big investment if you're really going to do that right. But now so much can be done at home. I'm revisiting that a little bit, and I started a project yesterday with a friend in California that we're going to send some files back and forth, and then get together a couple of times a year and try to play for a couple of weeks or something like that here, there, and yon. And I've got a couple of people I want to work with in that way. And so we'll see what the opportunities present themselves. I think that the opening will, I don't know if it's going to be like a switch gets thrown and all of a sudden we're back where we were. I think it's going to be more of a process.
Yeah.
I think that where we're going to go will be better than where we were. I think
I agree.
our world is going to be cleaner. Our
Yeah.
world is going to be cleaner than it's ever been. And
Yeah.
I think people are going to be more careful about disease than it's ever been. I think there's going to be a lot of good things come out of this.
Yeah.
We agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Rick, I got to say, in signing off, I got to say this. Thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for being an inspiration. Here, real quick before we go, I'm going to make the executive decision. Nobody typed in who played drums on Kinda Blue. So here's what we're going to do. I'm making the executive decision. We had two people that have left something on the Facebook page. So I'm going to pick one of the names, and Chip, you're going to say who the winner is. I'm going to say two names, and Chip, first one you want, we'll send them the head. Either Kevin Layhem or Roman Montgomery. Sorry,
Kevin.
Kevin, you won the drum head. We're gonna
Kevin Lehman, Kevin, yeah.
awesome.
There's a great drummer.
There you go. So we'll send you a private message.
It comes with a catch, though. There's a catch part.
What's that? What's the catch?
There's a caveat. Kevin must review the head and get back to us on what he thinks about this Aquarian snare drum head.
That's a fantastic idea. That's a fantastic idea. We'll do that.
He's going to do a big long column.
There you go. We got to do it. Hey, and I will say this. Rick was instrumental also in helping. He's helped so many people. He helped me when I was a writer for Classic Drummer. When I was writing for Classic Drummer, I was going to turn in my first article, and I sent it to Rick first, and I had all the words out of order, and they were all misspelled, and there was, it was horrible. Rick helped me with that so much, and he's a great guy. And I think Rick, you're a true Southern gentleman, and you're a real. Every time I ever get around, whenever I've been around you, you just have this mellow demeanor, and I just. You're a great guy to hang with, and guys, he's a great drummer. He's humble and stuff, but you got to hear this guy play. He can play.
Well, thank you.
And just an inspiration to anybody that's like going through, something bad, cancer, hard times. You can't overcome it. Look to people like Rick Long. Look to people, for inspiration. You will get on the other side of this. So everybody, thanks for watching. Rick, thank you so much for being part of this.
Thank you.
Hey, next week we have one of the greatest drummers you'll ever find, one of the coolest guys, Joe Bergamini,
from
the director of the Sabian Education Network. He's going to be on. He's big with Hudson Music, Broadway. He is an acclaimed teacher and performer. We're all super excited about having Joe next week at the same time, 11 Pacific.
11 o'clock Pacific time. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Rick Long.
Thank you. Oh, my gosh.
You bet.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys next week on the deck.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.